Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. We've been talking security and the terrorist threat with our guests. We're bringing you more on the cost of living allowance, which feeds into the conversation about security and independent broadcasting later on the show. But let me welcome aboard Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm giving you the eye.
Good
doing
morning
very
to you.
well.
Yeah. I'm also doing well. That was a very interesting conversation you had. And, you know, I think just like all our panelists said, we are hearing a lot, but we are not seeing a lot done on the ground. And that's the problem, because the real deal is on the ground.
It's on the ground.
And so we just hope that something more tangible will be seen, and then we'll be making headway when it comes to awareness. Because this is security. Yeah?
We don't have a national action plan. So basically, I see my church, thankfully, again, I don't like mentioning, but it has a heavy security presence every Sunday. But I know that is not replicated across churches here in Accra.
You're right.
Professor Enning talks about the smuggling situation. Because you know some of these fertilizers actually have components that are used for explosive devices. It's happening in Ghana, funneling from Ghana to other countries. Our security forces, as Adib Sani points out, are not properly resourced. Immigration, getting some munitions only yesterday, and 90 rounds, what can that do when terrorists are attacking you with? Because they don't come playing, they come with the full haul.
Yeah.
And so many other dynamics that have got me very worried. So I do not know what your take is, but there are so many concerns. And
hopefully we will hear from the National Security Minister again. And also it will be good to hear from the President, I think, considering the threats and the latest report about Ghanaians being involved with some of these groups. It will be great to hear the President and hear if there's an action plan, like we did with COVID, you know, and we moved full force. I think it will be a good thing to hear from the President. I hope we hear from him.
And Prof. Enning says something that got my heart skipping beats. He says our level of preparedness is 0. Time will tell.
Time will tell indeed. But thank you so much, Benjamin, for holding the fort.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the cola conversation you're about to have.
Yes. And
I don't have cola in the studio, but I'll choose some for you.
Not only cola, but here's what is happening. The TUC is vowing to end what they describe as a class system in the payment administration. It says it favors Article 71 holders. I really want to know this morning how they intend to end what they refer to as that class system. And so I'll be speaking to Mr. Kwabnotu, who is with the TUC, and he joins us on the phone with more on this. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Mr. Otu.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let me just start our conversation with an update on the cost of living allowance. Last week, we heard from the TUC. We were told then that the Minister for Finance was going to come out with an implementation strategy on when to start paying and how the payments will be done. Have you heard? Is there an update on that particular implementation strategy?
Okay, I have personally not heard anything about it, but it doesn't mean that my bosses haven't heard. It's possible that they are negotiating, and it's a normal practice after negotiations. We then have to also negotiate the implementation processes and program for it. Yeah.
How long does that usually take?
It shouldn't take more than a week. It usually doesn't take more than a week. But it depends on the actors involved. If you have people that busy, it can stretch over a week.
Right, Mr. Otu, so let's zoom into our main conversation today. The TUC is vowing to end what you refer to as a class system in the pay administration. How do you intend to do this?
Okay, so first of all, the class system is where you have a situation where the bulk of the people are under single span, receiving very low salaries, and it translates into low pensions when they retire.
Yeah.
Then you also have a few privileged people under Article 71 but also some levels in the state-owned enterprises receiving what everybody thinks is a hefty pay. And again, it translates into a hefty pension when they retire. And I mean, the class system becomes even more revealing when you realize that the group of public sector officials that do not contribute to pension actually earn better pension when they retire. Those on SNIT who contribute to pension. And then if you take the SNIT itself, you have these huge inequities where you have someone, the bulk of the people down there earning about 300 Ghana cedis in a month. And then you have somebody on the same pension scheme earning about 142,000 Ghana cedis a month. That, for us, is obscene, and it ought to be eliminated. How we intend to do this, there is an ongoing review process of the single spine together with the other pay regimes in the public sector. And as the Secretary General noted in his press statement, we have our minds and ears firmly fixed on the outcome of that process. And we think that together with government must come round and work with us to ensure that this review process thoroughly overhaul the public sector pay regime to make it fairer, but also to enhance the pay levels of particularly people at the bottom of the pay structure.
It's early days yet, but what are you hoping to do? Are you hoping to have, for example, the pay structure of Article 71 holders looked at such that there's a reduction in how much they earn, or you want that of public sector workers to match up to theirs? What exactly are you looking for?
A combination of all that, but of course, in pay administration, it is difficult to say reduce somebody's pay. What we could do is actually to say, let's raise the bottom. So that is one area we'll be looking for. But also, we have to have a mechanism that ensures that we are all on an integrated salary structure so that everybody knows which group is receiving what percentage annually, so that we arrest this escalating imbalance, inequity between the various groups within the public sector. We are looking for a situation where we could have, for example, a truly single span salary structure on which every group's salary will be determined. It's not out of place to have Article 71 on the single span salary structure. And even if they remain a separate salary structure, it is possible technically to link them so that whatever is given to the bottom is related one way or the other to the top. And we arrest this escalating inequities which we observe within the public sector pay space.
Dr. Ote, I was shocked to hear that some teachers who've worked for about 2 decades earn as little as 2,500 or 2,800. Now, when you compare them to what other Article 71 office holders earn at the end of the month, the difference is astronomical. And so looking at how we would, like you've just said, it's difficult to say we're going to reduce the pay structure. It's likely that those at the bottom will have to catch up. What will it take us? And I'm asking this because even 20% COLA is difficult for government to achieve. So with this initiative that you're embarking on, how long do you think it will take us to achieve this?
I mean, so we are in a very difficult economic situation at the moment. We recognize that. We are not oblivious to the challenges facing government. But that in itself also means that if you take, for example, Article 71, they themselves must demonstrate, they must live the difficulties they tell us we are in. And that, for example, will mean that they slow down on their own increment. So, for example, the president has given a commitment that in 2021 and beyond, they will not take a salary increase. That could go a long way to slow the gap. But it also hasn't had to end there. It means that you actually push up the bottom. And I mean, if you check the last emolument report by Professor Yen Tiamwa, they stated something clearly, that at no point should Article 71 be given a salary increase higher than what was given to the public sector, and actually defined that they should get something lower than what the public sector got. In all of these things, I think it has to be done within a time frame. And I think if we give ourselves, like, say, 5 years, it should be possible for us to eliminate the obscene inequities we see in the public sector administration. We are not saying that teachers and MPs should earn the same salary. What we are saying is that the current inequities are unjustified. You cannot explain it by any means, and it has to be bridged. So we are looking to see within a period, say 5 years, that the teachers have moved, and they have moved in tandem with the Article 71 and getting closer to their pay and other conditions of service. But we should also remind ourselves that there are people not in Article 71, the SOEs, the starters, that are actually earning higher than Article 71 office holders. So we know that within the public space, some people earn twice the salary of the President of the Republic. And it is important that we bring all of those people into the discussion.
A quick one.
We tend to focus on Article 71 alone, when in fact there are people, CEOs, whose rent allowance alone is getting to about half of the president's pay. And it ought to look at all of that as well.
All right. Doc, why can't teachers earn as much as MPs do? And what goes into determining the salary? Let's focus on teachers for now, and you can include other public sector workers if you have the time. But what goes into determining how much a teacher earns?
That's a very technical question. So in pay administration, you have something we call compensable factors. So for example, the level of risk incorporated in the work you do, the level of knowledge and qualification, experience, the responsibility placed on you. So you score all of these things, and then you determine how much each public sector is supposed to get, how much a particular job is supposed to get. But I mean, we have done that for teachers and all the workers on single span salary structure as far back as 2010. We did that when we placed people on the single span salary structure. I don't know whether we have done that for the MPs, for example, or ministers, for example. We haven't done that. And it's important that we do all of these things together to define a scientific relationship between what a teacher should get and what an MP should get, and monitor it over time, so that we don't end up after 10 years with a wide gap nobody can explain.
Now, just with you, finally, on the issue of dealing with what you refer to as a class system in the pay administration. In other jurisdictions, politicians are considered public sector workers, and they are included in the general public sector pay structure. Do you think it's something we should explore?
Yeah, so in other jurisdictions, they do that. Some other jurisdictions don't do that. So in African context, for example, if you review salary, the politicians in Africa have always been treated as a class, different from the rest of other public sector workers. But I definitely think that we need to explore what you just said. And let me give you an example. The very first emolument committee, the Presidential Emolument Committee set up by His Excellency, the late President Rawlings, the so-called Green Street Committee, actually placed Article 71 office holders on the existing public sector salary structure. So it was extended to accommodate them with the President of the Republic at the head, at the top of that salary structure. I think that we should explore that possibility, because that way everybody will feel that the politicians are not telling us that times are hard, when in fact they themselves are allocating a chunk of the money for themselves. I think it's something worth considering, particularly in our case.
I'm grateful.
If you the agitations.
I'm grateful for your time this morning. Dr. Kwabena Otu is Director of Labour Policy and Research at the TUC, and we've just been discussing the latest move by the organization to have the class system in pay administration looked at again. They say they want to bridge the gap. But Bernard J., who's General Secretary of Public Services Workers Union, also joins me for his take on this particular one. So quickly, sir, we've been told by Dr. Otu what the intention is, how they hope to execute this. Your quick thoughts on this decision by the TUC.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. J.
Yeah, if you could just come again.
All right, I'm saying that I have been discussing with Dr. Otu, who is with the TUC, the latest decision by the organization to deal with what they refer to as, or what it refers to as, the class system in the pay administration. He's been sharing a lot with us. And we ended on that note about considering whether Article 71 office holders should be considered as public sector workers and put on the general pay system. And he said that would be a good idea. I want to know what your thoughts are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I associate myself with what Dr. Otu has said, and we are part of the TUC. So all that TUC has put out yesterday at the press conference, we are totally for it. And yes, I must say that politicians are public servants. I mean, they are serving the public. They are serving citizens of this country. It's only that they are elected and we are appointed. That is the only difference that I would say is quite significant. But other than that, we are all serving the public, and therefore, if we are going to remunerate this class of workers, then we must do it in such a way that it is fair, and then it is to the benefit of the country as a whole, as opposed to the system we currently have, which is highly unfair and skewed towards Article 71 office holders.
We've heard about what some teachers earn in this country, woefully inadequate. Are you able to tell us what some of your members who belong to the the Public Services Workers Union, how much do they earn, averagely?
Well, averagely on the single spine, as we kept saying, salary levels are quite low. Averagely, the average person will be a degree holder, which will be about level 16 to 18 on the single spine, depending also on how long the person has worked. And that is just around the 2,000 figure. And after taxes and everything are taken, other statutory deductions are taken out. The average public sector worker is not going home with anything more than 2,000 cedis.
And does this include allowances, or that is paid separately?
Well, most of my members virtually do not have allowances. Basically, I mean, go to CNC, go to National Theatre, and those other places. They barely have any allowance. When you go to NCC, you find the worker has only one allowance, which is just about 10% of what is earning. And basically, that is it. But majority of our members do not have any allowances. We are in a system where every allowance you take to fair wages to go and negotiate, they give you 1,001 reasons why you are not qualified for that allowance. Now, let's improve the pay also so that people will be properly remunerated. That has also become a challenge. So it makes the situation of the average public sector worker quite dire. And we need to make conscious efforts to make sure that we correct all these challenges that we have.
So for you, what does ending the class system mean? Does it mean shoring up or increasing the salaries of public sector workers or reducing that of Article 71 office holders?
Well, thank you very much. Ending the class system for me simply means that we change the way we remunerate Article 71 and then other public sector workers. I heard my colleague Kwabna earlier telling you that when we started this Fourth Republic in former President Rawlings, the late former President Rawlings regime, Article 71 office holders were placed on the same salary structure as what was existing in the public sector at the time. The only thing is they will be at the top, but when you take the ratio or the relativities, the gap will not be as big as it is now. But what we have now is just unacceptable. There are various options we can choose. The thing about these things is that there is no fixed system or one perfect system that you say you want to adopt. You must be pragmatic in these things and agree on a system that will be consistent, that will be transparent, that will be equitable, so that everybody will be, that is fair, that is the final thing, that everybody will feel treated fairly. And that's the system we should be looking at adopting. We can still decide to have a different structure for Article 71, but it must be linked. It must be linked so that what is being paid to the Article 71 as it is now, that it's not so huge as compared to the teachers or other public sector. I think that is what we are looking at. The difference and the conditions, not to talk of the other allowances and the rest. I think Article 71 office holder should be able to subscribe to DSTV without the state paying for subscription for. If it's in the office, it's understandable. But official residents, with all the freebies and other things they have. So we need to look at these things holistically, from the allowances to the salary itself, and then the ex gratia. These are the things that are killing. I mean, people work for 30 years, 40 years in the public sector, and we are bold. These are Article 71 office holders who are the decision makers, are bold to say that they are not entitled to end of service benefits. But you have an Article 71 office holder, apart from all the freebies and the allowances, and then the salary they are taking, they will still take huge ex gratia at the end of their term of office. We think it's unacceptable. It's a system that should be scrapped. It's a class system, as my colleague has described it, and our Secretary General has stated. And we think that we should scrap all this. And what we are saying is that let's have a holistic system. Let's agree on a new structure. We are waiting next month to see what the single spine review that is being done will bring. I have my doubts as to what is coming, if it will really address the concerns that we have. But it can only work if we are able to deal with the Article 71 issue as well. And it is, nobody should say it's an entrenched clause in the Constitution. The Constitution didn't say Article 71 should be paid so much, maybe 1 to 50 or 1 to 80 when it comes to the public, relation to other public sector workers. That is not what the Constitution says. The Constitution is only established in a mechanism by which, or a process, procedure by which their salaries should be determined. But when we go and sit down and we are determining these things, we should look at the levels as compared to what other public sector workers are earning. And then we come back and say things are hard, things are difficult. But some people are getting way above. It is not showing that things are hard or things are difficult. And that's why we refer to it as a class system, and we need to correct it as soon as practicable.
Thank you, Mr. J, for contributing to the discussion this morning. Bernard J is General Secretary of the Public Services Workers Union, and we've been talking about the TUC's vow to end what it refers to as a class system in Ghana's pay administration. Let's now have a conversation with the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, GIBA. It is organizing its annual general meeting this week in Kumasi. Cecil Sunkwa-Mills is its president, and he joins us via Zoom. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining the program. Tell us more about what your AGM will focus on.
Good morning to you, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. The Ghana Independent Broadcasters will be hosting its AGM in Kumasi on the 21st. Basically, we're going to be taking stock of events for the past, this time is 3 years because of COVID, and we'll look at some achievements that have happened in the period, and also some challenges. So basically, that is what we'll be looking at.
Will the issue of the broadcasting bill feature in there? Because I know that at the time it was topical. There were contributions from GIBA about how we needed this and when we needed to get work done on it.
So for NEGLI, I also represent the private broadcasting in industry on the board for the Ministry of Information. So we have currently been given an insight of a progress plan for the broadcasting bill. There apparently is a plan, a rollout plan. And we're waiting to have that plan rolled out, where we would see the input that we gave. Some of the input also goes to look at how the NMC and the NCA will work together for the industry. We should realize that with time, we've seen infrastructure and content converge in the industry. So it's time for us to look at how we work with that kind of a framework, and how we can also delve into regulation of the industry with that kind of insight in mind.
Would you say we've slowed down a bit on it? Because I remember even at the time when there were some arrests made in relation to 2 young boys who had allegedly murdered a colleague of theirs because of what they had seen on TV. There was a lot of buzz, there was conversation, there was a drive. Would you say we've slowed down on our plan to get this as soon as possible?
Definitely, we would have expected to have seen the bill come out much faster. But on our side, we have actually been pressurizing the responsible stakeholders and the ministry to have this come through. Besides that, we have also focused on a couple of other areas in terms of growth of our industry, and I'm happy to say that we've seen some record growth since we took over last year, September. We've got almost 70 new members, and what this does for us, not just a bit of fundraising, but what it does is it allows us to also be a lot more empowered in terms of advocacy, and at the same time help to push ethical broadcasting, and also spread out a lot of capacity building initiatives to a lot more stations in the country.
Mr. Sunkwa-Mills, I am glad you just mentioned ethical broadcasting, because it leads me to my next question. I correct me if I'm wrong. I know that to be a member of GIBA is voluntary. So the fact that you have a private broadcasting house or company doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically a member of GIBA. But I'm sure GIBA is interested in some of these news stations that have come up, where we see a lot of unethical broadcasting, unethical journalism being practiced. What is your idea on how to contribute in solving this as GIBA?
The first approach is actually, we'll go back to talking about the bill, the broadcasting bill. because some of the clauses that we have discussed and recommended in that bill tends to deal with the convergence of content management versus frequency, where you can look at sanctions, etc., but based on both ends. So if right now you find if it's about content infringement, you've got the NMC having to deal with that separately with very some limited powers of fighting. And then you've got the NCA, which actually is granting the license and the platform also on the other side, but cannot do much about content. So there's a need for convergence. So the broadcasting bill actually carries some key portions where we can discuss. There would be opportunity to discuss further, but we see that as one of the tools. The second one is what we're doing now is whilst we're bringing in a lot of members, like I mentioned, to join the association, we have a code of ethics which we're quite serious about. So you would notice that most of our members, there's been a few cases where some individuals have infringed, but we actually are very active to make sure that our members are in line in terms of the type and quality of broadcasting that they actually churn out.
What happens to your members who do not abide by the ethics you've just spoken about?
Yeah, so we actually have, we also have in the code that we have, there is some punitive measures, including expelling of members, including suspension. And some of it we try to also remedy. So based on the offense and what goes, we actually reach out to the principals, and then there's a process that we go through to have that done. But it's actually all documented in our code of conduct. So we do have punitive measures for members who do that, and there's a process for that.
So majority of professionals who work in broadcasting and who work as journalists in this country belong to private organizations, some of who are members of GIBA. In this year's Press Freedom Index, Ghana scored poorly, and there was a new scoring system that was used, and there were many, factors that influence every country's general score. So you had issues of the economy, security, and the likes. And for Ghana, under economic, our worst score was under economic, and it raised concerns about remuneration for journalists, and it gave reason for people like Kujopon Nkrumah and others to talk about how journalists are paid in this country and the need for employers to look at that. I don't know if that has come to the attention of GIBA and whether it will feature at your annual general meeting, but your general thoughts on this particular issue and what could be done to ensure that journalists are sorted out properly, and broadcasters as well.
It has definitely come to our attention, and we have had discussions and mainly spoken about two different areas. The first area is look internally and look at enhancing how we can increase revenue for stations. However, you find that the whole environment has also changed. A couple of years ago, there was the advertising revenue that was available to the industry did not have the impact of online broadcasting, other online tools that came through, in social media, etc. This has actually eroded a huge portion of the revenue that stations would make in terms of advertising and sale of airtime. We have looked at a situation where we actually upscale the industry players so that they look at how they can also take advantage of what has come in rather as a challenge. Some stations are actually looking at doing this quite well. And we've even seen stations appear completely who are not members. They're not going through NCA, and they're sitting online and they're making revenue. So we're looking at how we can actually achieve this. The second one is to look at exactly the way our landscape is now in terms of regulation and the issuing of licenses. Yes, we agree that the Constitution gives every business the opportunity to reach out and get a license. Anybody can actually go that as a business. Now we have almost exhausted a lot of the frequencies in most of the areas. It is, we have, if I should say, we have almost 490 radio stations. We have 114 TV stations. We may be the highest in Africa, if not the world. And this actually has an impact on stations' ability to generate revenue, because remember, the advertising revenue for the country is of a certain size, and not to talk about the impact of COVID, which came through and eroded quite a lot of possibilities for stations. And then we also have had the online impact. So it's also a conversation with regulatory authorities, etc. That have we issued licenses? Have we crowded the space too much? But this is a conversation, and this also leads to a lot of stations on the edge, and then people will try to make money any way they can, etc. So this is a discussion that we need to have, and then make sure that the bill allows these things to happen, and also regulatory authorities look at the best way to manage this. We've seen that because of the crowding in of a lot of stations, we've seen that now they've also recommended a reduction of the radius of broadcast for stations. So these are all things that are we doing it well, but we need to discuss this and make sure that we're growing appropriately, and we can actually feed the station, because when you feed the station can make sure that the journalists get paid properly and remunerated properly.
Finally,
so these are the two areas that we need.
All right. Sorry, I thought you had ended there. Finally, Mr. Sunkwamils, if there's any other thing we need to know about the annual general meeting, do let us know as we wrap up the conversation.
No, so for the first time, we're actually also bringing together all regional coordinators. We successfully were able to elect regional coordinators for all the 16 regions in the country, since we had an increase in the number of regions. And we're bringing their deputies also together for orientation. Now, this is key for the growth, and we've already seen the impact of the growth that we've experienced by putting in this structure and making it serious. The other thing we'll be looking at is how we can resource these coordinators, not just financially, but also with skills, etc., so they can continue to act on our behalf on the ground and contribute towards national development communication. So those are some of the key things. One of the things we also discuss is tax compliance of stations. We do not want any stations to fall foul of any fiduciary requirements in terms of tax, and at the same time to make sure that all taxes that hit the industry are appropriate and fair. So these are some of the issues that we'll also discuss.
All the best, sir. Cecil Sunkwamils is president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and we've been discussing issues surrounding the sector, plus at the association's annual general meeting. You're watching the AM show. I'm Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. When we come back, we'll be taking your comments. Remember, we've had a discussion about the threats of terrorism. We've also spoken about the TUC's vow to end the class system in Ghana's pay administration. Do stay for details.